Okay. Hello. Is this working? I hope this is working. I sure do think this is working. All right, here we go. Hi. Sorry about the scuff to anybody that might have been expecting something a little bit better. So, hi. My name is Andrew Swelly. I am, as of right now, Salt Lake City Community College's only and therefore first. I was going to take a drink of water, but I'm talking. Why would I do that? First esports champion. Now, that esport doesn't relate to anything on the second topic that I'm going to be talking about today, but it is going to be related to the first topic. That, of course, being this is my channel. I think, like, if anything, I'm going to maybe cut this in half and pin this as like an info video, I guess. I don't know. Do people still do that on YouTube? I don't know. Here I am. I don't have a script. I should have maybe like at least prepared like a bullet point list of what I wanted to talk about. But I'm basically just going to ramble for a little bit until the alarm on my phone goes off telling me that the pozole that I'm cooking is done. So let me actually turn off my ringer so that we don't have that issue, but we can still hear the alarm when that happens. I also sent out a couple of couple of invitations to people talking about. Wait, maybe I should pull up a cooler looking background. Let's just pull up the. Oh, maybe I shouldn't have every single image I've ever posted. It should be fine, but that was a little weird. Okay. I've got nothing to hide, but like it'd be kind of weird if I just started showing you guys every single image and my like insane ramblings on certain things. Let's pull this up. This is my image. This is my thumbnail. We're gonna have this as a background for a little bit until I figure out exactly what the heck I want to talk about. I mean, obviously I know exactly what I want to talk about, but you know what I mean. What I want to talk about in regards to, like I said, the health of my channel, or not health. Health implies that I even have a channel to begin with. Basically, I want to talk about my plans for the upcoming semester. As an esports champion now, I have some duties. As I keep saying that. I don't feel like a champion, but we can talk about that later. And then we can also, of course, talk about the actual thing that I wanted to do this stream for. So, I suppose I can go ahead and get started and just talk a little bit about last semester. So, what do I mean by champion? Because obviously, the league that we're in, right? It's a national esports league with a bunch of different colleges. I want to say like 50 of them. It's generally like a community college level, but like a varsity community college level. So something in between casual tournaments, but a little bit lower than, you know, actual professional, and of course even just collegiate, like a university level. You know, I'm never gonna win a tournament facing off against people maybe from like a University of Utah or Arizona State or anything like that. But that being said, last semester was my first real semester, and I think the first actual real semester for Salt Lake Community College as an esports program and not just a club. And in that in this semester, I placed first in the entire Hearthstone thing. On top of that, I didn't just place first; I placed undefeated. They were all best of 5 matches, every single one of them, and I didn't lose a single match. I lost a couple games, but that's to be expected when you have more than 20, 30 games in a season. But again, I didn't lose a single one. And that's interesting to me because I don't feel like I'm the greatest Hearthstone player. And because of that, I decided that I wanted to, if I'm going to sit down and I'm going to focus, because now I need to focus, right? I'm a Hearthstone champion, so I need to sit down and I need to focus and I need to concentrate. So now that I'm a Hearthstone champion, or rather an esports champion for my school, hello, I finally see chat. I finally have viewers too, that's kind of cool. I'm just talking about my esports semester coming up for probably the next like 5 or so minutes, and then we can actually talk about the reason I started this stream. Anyway, so now that I'm like an esports champion, I have to sit down and I have to actually like I have to actually like focus on esports as a viable thing, because it's actually paying for my school. It's, you know, I've gotten scholarships from this. I'm getting rewards, like even a Super Bowl sized like ring, like a massive Super Bowl ring that I'm gonna put on my hand, you know, once, and then probably just put it in a display case forever. A jersey, a plaque, a trophy for the school. Yeah, and so for next semester, I have this, like, I guess the word is anxiety, that now that I'm the, you know, in that league, now that I'm in that professional scene for the school, at least, on the school level, I need to at least do something for the school and not just be, you know, Andrew playing games and, you know, earning scholarships for playing games. Andrew needs to play well for the school so that the school can feel, or like be proud of me, I guess. And so because of that, I'm going to be focusing a lot on the 2 games I'm going to be playing next semester, and there are 2 of them. I'm going back to Hearthstone. I'm the Hearthstone champion. I got to play it again. I'm probably not going to win first place this time. I'm probably not even going to win. I don't know. It depends on how many schools, because last semester, and I don't want to say that there's an asterisk on it, because I did really work hard, but at the same time, there were only 12 total participants in the entire tournament. So saying I'm a national champion is saying, like, I'm the champion of 12 schools. That being said, I'm still a national champion, so I have to try and, you know, if not maintain that, then at least maintain a status of somewhat doing well for the school, so that the school can be proud of me. And because of that, because I already have history with Hearthstone, I'm going to be going back to Hearthstone. That being said, I'm also I'm a big fan of League of Legends. League of Legends has become my favorite competitive game of all time. It's probably the game that I've played the second most behind World of Warcraft. And that's actually why I wanted to do the second half of this stream here, is because I wanted to talk about the competitive 1v1 Wild Rift metagame. And after a lot of research that I've done, I've found that a lot of my League of Legends experience can translate over, and so I can talk about basically what the 1v1 metagame will look like. Again, we'll get into that. As of right now, I'm going to be playing Hearthstone next semester, and I'm going to be playing League next semester. On the main team, on the side team, I don't know, but I want to play for the school on my favorite competitive game, because I've been putting a lot of time into it. Probably not as much as I could be, but now that I've got sort of a fire lit under me, under my feet by a certain Indonesian VTuber challenging me to a race to Diamond, I kind of have to sit down and actually focus. So I've already set aside a monthly budget. I'm going to be working, or like getting coaching, actually. I'm going to be purchasing some coaching, seeing if I like it, seeing if I don't. I haven't tried coaching significantly before, but I might as well try. So I'm going to purchase some coaching. I'm going to be talking to my team captain. I'm going to be doing practices for both solo and competitive, and yeah. So, that being said, got that out of the way. That's the stuff that I'm doing for next semester in esports. So let's go ahead and talk about Kyla Showdown Rift. Kyla Showdown Rift. This wonderful person right here hosted probably the coolest thing I have ever seen. I mean, this thing, maybe I shouldn't click on Reddit. I just want to pull up the image. How do you do that? Open image in a new tab. Okay, here we go. So this cool person right here, cool, right? Not anything else. No other descriptors are necessary. Just hosted probably the most, like, the coolest idea for a, well, the first Hololive fan tournament. And she explained it best. You know, she talked about it. She said it was a 1v1 tournament. Just, you know, talked about the structure, talked about the format. With a limited champ pool, each player plays the same champion as the opponent, and they butt heads and, you know, try to win. Now, I didn't actually know this going into it, but the Wild Rift 1v1 format is not... I wanted to pull it up on the wiki, but I don't know if they have it on the Wild Rift wiki. Okay, they don't. Wild Rift, maybe if I type in duel. Okay, well, I guess I can't pull it up. The Wild Rift 1v1 format, right? It's very unique to Wild Rift, and I really hope that they add it in League in the future. But essentially, you have two champions, and in this the specific instance, the 1v1 format is the same champion. I don't know if that's true for Wild Rift itself. I didn't actually get very much practice in. I grinded all the games that I needed to get all the champions, but the problem is that I didn't want to keep playing because, number one, my phone is old, and so it gets really hot, and so I actually got a blister on my thumb. You can't see it anymore, but I got an actual blister from my phone overheating, and me playing Wild Rift for like 6 hours straight. That being said, I played a lot of Yasuo because he was the first champion I got that was in the champion pool. Anyway, also, playing on 250 ping is just a nightmare, and so when I found out I wasn't in the tournament, I just dropped Wild Rift, and I thought I would just focus on this. But I had done a lot of preparation. I had been doing... So, Kyla makes notes. She talks about how she has notes on stream, or like on her computer, and she talks about it on stream, and she says for Minecraft, for Phasmo, for Lethal Company, for whatever, she has notes, and she takes those notes and she puts them down. I don't really do that. I do that in my head, and... I kind of just retain it. It's not a good strategy, and I'm not trying to say I'm like a hecka smart or whatever, but like it's how I take notes. I never took notes in school. I never did whatever. I just remember things, and what I remember is those champions. So let's actually pull up that Wild Rift wiki and just you know, whatever. I'll just do this. Pull up the Wild Rift wiki and let's just pull up the champions one by one. And talk about them. So first we have Aatrox. Aatrox. Is this not the Wild Rift? This is not the Wild Rift wiki, Andrew. Wild Rift wiki Aatrox. Okay. Anyway, let's go back to talking about the format before we actually get into the talking about the champions. So, Wild Rift 1v1, it's first person to either get 2 kills or to destroy the tower before the opponent, right? I think there's also a win condition involving the Ring of Fire. I know that when the Ring of Fire closes, that sort of marks the end of the round. But I don't know what happens if you're like 0-0 tied when the excuse me, Ring of Fire closes, or when the Ring of Fire is closing and it's like you're 2-1. And then your opponent kills you, so now you're 2-2, but then the Ring of Fire is, like, close. I don't know exactly how that worked, and I didn't actually see it brought up. I unfortunately had to take a personal medical leave in the middle of the tournament stream, and so for the first couple rounds in the, obviously, semifinals and finals that I was able to watch, that never came up, so I can't tell you how that works, and it's not really a win condition you're playing around anyway. It doesn't change anything that I'm going to be talking about here. What I am going to be talking about here is what's strong, what's weak, what's good for each champion specifically, and what's good overall. Because if you want to win in a Wild Rift 1v1 tournament, or even just a 1v1 tournament of any kind, it's way different than competitive 5v5, right? Even just, it's way different than solo queue. So, big example of what I mean. Aatrox, right? I saw everybody taking Conqueror, and I don't think that's bad. I really don't think that that's a bad thing to take on Aatrox at any point in time, but usually you take Conqueror because you're in an extended fight with multiple people. Conqueror is the rune that you take, at least in main League of Legends. You take it on Fiora, you take it on Aatrox, you take it on fighters, you take it on sometimes even tanks, and you take it because you want to be staying in the fight for a consistent amount of time. And that's just not happening in a 1v1. It is, right? You're going to be in a consistent fight, and I saw Conqueror, fully... I heard the little doom noise that Conqueror makes at least once while I was watching the finals, right? But Aatrox Conqueror, I feel like a lot of people just clicked on it because that's just the basic one. Now, of course, we had some really experienced players that were playing here, but if we go to... Let's pull up Wild Rift runes. Let's go ahead and actually take a look at all of the runes that are available. I like how Kraken Slayer is a keystone in this game. But everything else, I did look at this before. Everything else is roughly the same. Electrocute, Airy, Phase Rush, Conqueror, Fleet Footwork, Grasp at the Undying, Aftershock, Lethal Tempo. Even Kraken Slayer, it actually works the same as the item in the other one, so that's pretty good too. First Strike and Glacial, right? Now, Conqueror... Like I said, it's what you want in long, drawn-out fights, but you don't get a lot of long, drawn-out fights in the 1v1. Usually you're doing either a trade, an all-in, or somebody's backing, right? If you do a trade, then Conqueror proccing, all it really says is, do you want to turn this trade into an all-in? And if you do, okay, fine. Conqueror is fantastic. That's what it does in lane in League of Legends. When you're playing Fiora, you take Conqueror when you want to have all-in trades, not just a pokey trade. However, if you're in most situations where you just want to do a poke and get out, Fiora takes Grasp. And that is sort of what I feel would be better in a 1v1 than Conqueror. But again, I'll talk about that specifically what I mean by the different keystone runes when we get into that. But essentially, when I was looking at the metagame for this format, when I was looking at Aatrox, Lee Sin, Ezreal, Teemo, Yasuo, and who am I missing? Blitzcrank. I don't feel like what they normally take in 5v5s is ever really what you want to take in this. So then I thought, okay, what runes are better and what runes are worse in the 1v1 format versus the actual format versus, 5v5. So first I wanted to talk about that, runes, summoner spells, etc. Because we also saw something with summoner spells, something very similar. Now, as for the format itself, like I said, you're not doing a lot of extended trades. You're doing a lot of either short trades or you're doing all-ins. And if you're doing an extended trade, it just kind of ends up where one person kills the other, and it's sort of even just a coin flip, right? So if you can play around the short trades or the extended ones, the all-ins, then that's sort of your win condition. So that's why I think the best runes going into it would be things like Electrocute and Grasp of the Undying. Lethal Tempo is also good, even though that is an extended trade one too. Now, we didn't have any Lethal Tempo champions, so don't really worry too much about that unless you're playing like Nashor's Tooth, Blitzcrank. But I'm pretty sure I saw at least once like an Aftershock. And Aftershock I just don't, like, because it does like a shockwave that deals magic damage to nearby enemies. You don't really care about dealing damage to multiple enemies. Aftershock is balanced around the fact that you can, and often do, by taking Aftershock, an explosion area around you that damages, up to 5 people on the enemy team. Aftershock isn't really that good, and it's not really that balanced for being good in 1v1s. So if you're, say Blitzcrank, who I'm pretty sure by default goes for Aftershock in the 5v5, you're sort of wasting that damage, that potential damage. Let's see, look at it, right? It says 12 to 110 based on level, plus 3% of your maximum health, magic damage to nearby enemies. Let's just say that is, 100 damage, because that's probably what it would be in the later stages of the game, although you don't get that late. So let's just say that is 50 damage, because I feel like that's like a solid number that it is. So you immobilize a champion, you gain those resistances, which is nice, and then you deal 50 damage. The problem is that 50 damage isn't as much as it could be. If you're in a 5v5, you're not doing 50 damage, you're doing 250 damage. 50 to each of the enemies, theoretically, right? That's the theoretical maximum that you can do with Aftershock. Whereas in League of Legends Wild Rift, 1v1s, if you're doing, if you're taking Aftershock, you might just find yourself, doing an extra tiny little bit of damage. And that extra little bit of damage is after a duration. That's why the duration is there. That's why it is structured the way that it is. Because there is a delay. It's sort of balanced on itself. And yeah, anyway. So my question then is, if you're ever about to take Aftershock, it's totally fine. You have to play around it. You have to keep in range of them so that your Aftershock deals damage to them. But why wouldn't you instead take Grasp of the Undying? Grasp of the Undying, right? Entering combat grants you a stack. By the way, that combat can be with minions. It grants 1 stack every second for the next 3 seconds. After reaching 3 stacks, you can auto an enemy champion. And autoing them deals bonus damage. In this one, it heals you. Yep, it restores you a little bit of health, and you gain bonus health. Well, first of all, dealing that extra damage, we don't have to look at exact numbers here, but dealing that extra damage is what Aftershock is doing. But Aftershock requires you to immobilize the enemy champion and then wait a duration. Grasp of the Undying says you can hit minions, walk in for a trade to the enemy, hit them, get your Grasp proc, and then walk out. And we actually saw that in one of the early rounds, the Blitzcrank round, which I think was actually the first one. The early round Blitzcrank mirror, right? We had one person who took Grasp of the Undying, and the other person who I forget what they took, but they ended up losing. The person who took Grasp of the Undying also played around the fact that it gives you extra max health, and so he bought Sunfire Aegis, and he was playing Tank Blitzcrank, and that made me start thinking of like the structure of what the champions can build, and not just the runes and items, but like, what are items that you can build that aren't recommended. And that is the reason, ultimately, why I wanted to do this stream. I wanted to talk about the unintuitive things, like the Aftershock Grasp thing. I wanted to talk about the unintuitive item choices that you might see. Game plans that you wouldn't have unless you have 1v1 experience or have researched it, and I don't really have either. But I thought if maybe I could at least talk about it, put it into one place, then people can look at it and they can think about it for next time, and maybe next time, we'll have like an Electrocute Aatrox, which is, by the way, the first thing I wanted to talk about with the champions. But super quick, last tiny little thing before we do this. I wanted one last sort of primer getting into talking about the champions themselves, and to talk about the summoner spells that are available, right? Now, Mark and Dash and Clarity, I don't think they're allowed in 1v1s. We didn't see them as far as I know either. But I also don't think that you would ever take them, because Mark is really good for like engaging in on a 5v5. It's basically an Akali E that you can add to a big disruptive tank. You don't really need that in 1v1s. And then Clarity, I guess it gives mana, but you're backing so much. Like, Clarity is used in Wild Rift, in ARAM, because I don't want this. Stop. Is that playing music, by the way? I'm so sorry if like this stuff is playing music. I don't have the headphones on. Hold on. It's not playing anything now, and it says it's muted, so we can just yeah, okay. Yeah, my headphones don't work, by the way. I think I pinned that. Yeah, I did. Okay. Anyway. So then we look at the remaining summoner spells, right? Smite, ignore that too. But Clarity, by the way, is used in ARAM because you can't back, but you can back in this game mode, so don't worry about Clarity. So let's look at the rest of the summoner spells. We have Heal, Ghost, Barrier, Exhaust, Ignite, and Flash. Now, Flash is used 100% of the time, not 100%, nearly 100% of the time in Summoner's Rift in the 5v5, as well as a lot of the time on ARAM, because it has, for a lot of reasons. First of all, it's like a zero frame. It's like a frame one, just instantly you're in another position. It's a repositioning tool, but it has so many more uses on Summoner's Rift that you don't often find in, this single lane position, right? What do I mean by that? You have flashing over walls. You have flashing to engage in on a big fight, like a Rakan using his ultimate, flashing in and pulling everybody in. You have flash to escape. You have like all these like pretty much everything that you can imagine doing with a short range dash, instant dash, I should say, not again a flash, that you don't actually need in a 1v1. Think about this, right? How many times do you need to flash over a wall in a normal game of League of Legends? Now, I don't have a lot of people in chat, so that's totally a rhetorical question. But if you're playing League of Legends, right, lots of times you're running away from somebody and you come up to a wall, you flash over it, and then they're not chasing you anymore, so you've escaped. You used your flash, it's on a cooldown now, but you've escaped. Now, how many times have you used a flash in Summoner's Rift just to flash backwards? You're running away from somebody, let's say you're in the top lane, you're running away from somebody and you use your flash and you flash to get away from their ability, maybe to dodge a skill shot or whatever. It also happens a lot. But now, when you're in the 1v1, when you're in this confined, it's just a single lane, you only have one option for flash, and it's for that micro spacing. It's for either getting away or getting in. Flash is not as hyper useful in Wild Rift, except on one champion, which we'll get to when we get to him. But it's not that useful, in the Wild Rift 1v1, because it's a long cooldown, it's very short range, and after like half of the uses that you have for it, flashing over the wall, you just don't have, right? Flashing over the wall, flashing into an engage, you just don't have access to those. And so you'll see a lot of the people figured this out. Like, this is the one metagame analysis. Thank you, by the way. Never played League. That's okay. I just like talking, and that's basically why I'm doing this. So thank you. Anyway. When you have the amount of uses for flash cut in half, it's not an auto include. And so this is what, like, the original, 2014 is when League came out. Like, when League, Season 1 League, Riot had a lot of summoner spells, and the reason they had those was because they were meant to customize your gameplay on top of everything else that they had to customize. And so it was never intended for Flash to be the most important thing in the entire game. Now, Flash is. Flash absolutely is in League, and I'm sure in Wild Rift 2, the most important summoner spell. Flash combos, you need to know them, especially if you're playing somebody mechanically intense like Aatrox, who I suppose is the second one. I wasn't actually thinking too much about his interactions with Flash because it just doesn't come up too much in the 1v1s, but it's still there. You have Flash buffers. Aatrox as a prime example, he's using his Q. It's got a delay where he's swinging down his sword, right? Well, you can, while he's swinging down that sword, use your flash to reposition so that if your sword is about to hit here and you flash so that you're back here, your sword is now hitting here instead. That is, like, key to why Flash is just one of the most important tools in the game. And when Riot first made 2014 League of Legends, they weren't actually planning around Flash being that important, so they added all these summoner spells and eventually cut them down to basically what you see here. Except for Teleport, which is not in Wild Rift in the traditional sense, from what I've found out. But also, don't worry about it, because it's not relevant in 1v1s. So, Flash is, like, the most important summoner spell, but when you're in a 1v1 situation, Flash is not nearly as important. You can actually see that when you look at... In fact, I'm going to do something a little bit crazy. First of all, I'm going to show this background. Hello. And we're going to pull up Professor and show a bit of a tangent here. If you look up Trundle, by the way, here are my stats. I'm doing horrible this season. Don't worry about that. You pull up Trundle as a champion, and you see he's not even running Flash anymore. And the reason for that is because he is... And this is the long tangent that I'm trying to get around to. He is a 1v1 champion. He is a champion that excels in the 1v1, and so even though he has good use with Flash, he has better use with Ghost, with Teleport, with Barrier, with Exhaust, with Ignite. Now, Teleport isn't relevant in 1v1s. It's relevant in laning in League of Legends for different reasons, which we don't need to get into. But these right here, these 4 at the top right, are the most important summoner spells. Aside from on Aatrox and on Lee Sin, where I still feel like Flash is in the top cut, right? So, first of all, why not heal? Heal actually heals both you and an ally, and so it's balanced around the fact, like with Aftershock, how Aftershock is balanced around the fact that it deals damage to more than one enemy. Heal is balanced around the fact that it's healing you and one ally, which isn't really relevant in a 1v1 situation, because again, you don't have an ally to heal. So, why are Ghost, Barrier, Exhaust, and Ignite better? Well, like I said, you don't need a lot of microspacing with Flash. You don't need to flash in, flash out, whatever. That's not like the scary thing when you're playing Wild Rift 1v1s. I keep saying Wild Rift because my brain is like, it's League and it's Wild Rift, but it's not. It's Summoner's Rift and 1v1s, because if we had 1v1s in League, then all of this would apply too. So let's just, again, talk about Ghost, Barrier, Exhaust, and Ignite. These are all better in 1v1 situations because they are single target, they hit the enemy or yourself, and so they're balanced around that single target. Or they also, in the case of Ghost, provide a positioning tool, a way for you to get in, get out, but on a much shorter cooldown. In fact, let's see if we can see that. 90 seconds on Ghost, 150 on Flash. Now, we saw lightning rounds, especially in the finals. We saw some really, really fast rounds, where if you use Flash at the beginning of the round, you wouldn't be able to use it by the end of it, but you would be able to use Ghost by the end of it again. So, Ghost. Why is it called Ghost? You gain a burst of movement speed, and you can walk through anything, aside from, like, walls. So you can walk through minions and stuff, which you can't normally. So you might use Ghost on Blitzcrank, so that you can run in, hit them with your E, back out, do the Q combo. I don't know if you've seen the Blitzcrank EQ combo, but it's where you knock them up with your E. While they're knocked up, you run back, and then you hook them. In the time that it takes for them to come back down from the knock-up, your hook hits them and then pulls them back to you, and then you're able to continue the fight from there. That's like the main reason why Crit Blitzcrank and On-Hit Blitzcrank worked a couple, was it seasons or even just months ago? But that's why they worked in the game, because of that combo. You knock them up, you walk back, you hook, you're done. Ghost is able to help with that, and so is Flash. But like I said, Ghost, shorter cooldown. It also allows you to move through minions, which minion block, I think I saw it exactly once. I don't remember in what match or like what it was, but basically there is the unfortunate truth that sometimes minions can just get in your way, and so you're like trying to dodge. In fact, I'm pretty sure it was an Aatrox game, because let's say you're trying to dodge one of Aatrox's big ol' sword swings. He's hitting the ground, and you're in that position, and you're able to dodge it, except not really, because there's minions in the way, and so they minion block you, you get hit by the Aatrox thing, he finishes his combo, you die. Well, Ghost also helped you to get around that. Again, Flash can too, but everything that Flash can do in a 1v1 situation, Ghost can do slightly worse, but on a shorter cooldown, and other things as well, which is why I say that it's generally better than Flash. Aside from, like I said, Flash combos, which we'll talk about when we get to those champions. Then you have Barrier. Barrier acts as a better heal in 1v1s because it shields you base for 100 to 450, whereas heal only heals for 60 to 242, so like half of it. Now, heal also gives you movement speed and hits another ally. Does it in this game mode? Yeah, the most wounded ally champion. And you can see the most wounded ally champion at 200% effectiveness. Again, heal the summoner spell is balanced around the fact that it can help an ally, and so you don't really need it. So, like I said, Barrier is a better heal because it gives you more health in the form of a shield that lasts for 2 seconds. So if your opponent is about to do an all-in, I think we saw it on Blitzcrank once, so like the Blitzcrank, he hooked in the opponent, and then because it's another Blitzcrank, he knows that he's about to get hooked too, so he hits Barrier, the opponent EQs him, and doesn't do any damage because he used his Barrier. The opponent didn't have Barrier, he had Flash, so I believe they flashed away, and then the guy with barrier hooked him, got him back in, and then killed him. That's one of the things that happened in the tournament. And if you want to know which game, again, I'm horrible. I have like really bad memory, so I can't remember exactly which game that happened in, but that did happen. So barrier, it has its use to where it prevents the amount of like more damage than heal will do, and so it's just better in a 1v1 situation. It's also really good if in future formats of this we have like a Warwick or an Olaf as an option that you can play. Champions with inherent lifesteal, or even if you build lifesteal, are really strong with barrier because, especially Warwick and Olaf, because they get more lifesteal the lower health they are. But that barrier doesn't count towards your health total, so you can be at half health barrier and then lifesteal up to full health, and the barrier basically added that health on top of you, whereas if you're half health, you heal and then you lifesteal to full health. It's like you never had that health from the heal, or from the barrier. Like the barrier is on top of that, so I don't know if I'm explaining that too well, but essentially, because the barrier doesn't count as health, you can lifesteal the health that the barrier is blocking damage from hitting. So while it's blocking that damage with the shield, you can lifesteal and you can gain that health back. So if we ever have Olaf or Warwick, especially in the future, barriers and auto include, I think. Exhaust, people found out very quickly watching the tournament that Exhaust is the absolute best, bar none, summoner spell in this format. By the way, I, again, don't know if anything is ever, like, playing noise-wise, and I'm, like, constantly worried that it is. Wait, why don't I just do this? Where's my volume mixer? Let's just turn off. Yeah, that'll do it. Okay. Hopefully that helps if that ever becomes a problem in the future. People found out that Exhaust is the best one, and why is that? Well, first of all, Exhaust has a lot of effects. It reduces the damage that they do, and it reduces their movement speed. And it's got a really long time. Like, you look at it and you say 2.5 seconds. That's not a lot of time. In League of Legends, 2.5 seconds is everything. People complain about Morgana Q rooting them for 2 seconds, saying that it feels like forever, because it really does. When you're in an action-packed game like League, 2.5 seconds is an eternity. So, I mean, that's why when you see, like, barrier for 2 seconds, when I say, like, if you use barrier, you're pretty much always going to get the maximum health value out of the barrier, even though it's only for 2 seconds. That's because, again, a barrier, if it blocks a trade or an all-in, even if that all-in lasts for, like, the entire amount of time that an all-in would be, that's usually only 2 seconds. So that's why barrier is good there. Excuse me. But people found out that Exhaust is good, and there's a couple reasons. Number one, Exhaust is just by default the best 1v1 summoner spell in the game, because it makes the enemy do pretty much no damage to you. It's not pretty much, it reduces it by 40. It says that right there. They're reduced in damage that they're dealing to you, and they're slowed, which is just tremendously important in the 1v1. First of all, you're taking less damage, which, if you think about it, your goal is to deal more damage to the opponent than they deal to you pretty much always. Well, it also slows them. So while you're reducing the damage that they deal to you, you're also making it so that they have a harder time running away from you, dealing damage to them. And if they don't have Exhaust, then they can't just turn around and attack you in response, because all the damage that they're dealing is reduced by 40%. So if I'm Yasuo, and my opponent, of course, is also Yasuo, and I go in and I exhaust my opponent, and neither of us have dash for some reason, because we're Yasuo players and we don't press our buttons, we only press Q. That's a League of Legends joke. So if we're both just sitting there, queuing each other, attacking each other one-on-one, and I exhaust him, his options are either keep attacking me, deal less damage to me than I deal to him, and potentially even just, take a massive, massive chunk of health, or run away, but his running away is slowed. So either way, I'm on top of him, I'm dealing consistent damage to him. He can, again, either deal the damage back to me, which isn't much, or he can run away and still take damage. And that's why Exhaust is so good. Exhaust proved itself to be the best one, but the one that I think a lot of people were sleeping on, aside from Barrier, is Ignite. Now, Ignite is usually the 1v1 that you take in laning in League of Legends, and since this is basically a laning simulator, a lot of people took it, and it's good, but I still feel like it was slept on, especially the Exhaust Ignite combo. And that's because Ignite has... Well, first of all, what does Ignite do? It applies damage to the opponent. True damage, in fact, which means that it's not resisted. But basically it just applies damage to the opponent and it burns them for a short amount of time. How long is the time? 5 seconds. So they take a little bit of damage each tick, once a second, each second for 5. Excuse me. After those 5 seconds, the Ignite goes away and then you're done. However, something that people forget about Ignite is that not that second one that you see there, but the third one. I can't, like, move my cursor to hover over it, but you can see that it says it inflicts 60% Grievous Wounds. In PC League, it's 40. Grievous Wounds is the League of Legends term for healing reduction, and that is massive into 2 matchups specifically, potentially a third in this one, and that is Aatrox and Yasuo, as well as potentially Ezreal. And that's because Aatrox has healing in his kit. His entire kit is based around really big, heavy-hitting attacks that heal him. And Yasuo naturally builds lifesteal. I think every single Yasuo build I saw looking at Wild Rift when I was playing it involves Blade of the Rune King, involves Shield Bow, I think they have, and Bloodthirster, all of which have lifesteal. There's also the lifesteal boots, which I think a lot of people take just naturally, which I think it's kind of cool that they have lifesteal boots in that game, but I don't think it should be brought into PC for any reason, but whatever. Grievous Wounds reduces the effectiveness of that lifesteal, and so Ignite is almost like the auto-include into Yasuo and into Aatrox. It's also, you know, it has its use case into Ezreal, but we'll talk about what the opponent can do if they see the opponent, or, you know, see the player have Ignite in order to not, you know, play into that. And it's something that Yasuo can do too. So really Ignite is like the key one with Aatrox. And so when I talk about the summoner spells to be used, when I go to each individual champion, it's probably almost always going to be Exhaust, Ignite if they heal, and either like Barrier or Ghost if it's anything else. Now, you can also... Hey, Mike. You can also, again, have Flash, because there are the Flash combos, and we'll talk about why that's good on Aatrox and Lee Sin here in a second. Unfortunately, I'm not doing Hearthstone content today. This is going to be League of Legends Wild Rift content. And then we'll talk about at the end of this what I plan on doing for the semester going forward, because I do actually plan on streaming a little bit more. Not a little, a lot more, now that my semester is going to be... Well, we could talk about that. So, that out of the way, we talked about summoner spells and we talked about runes slightly, right? I didn't go into each rune specifically because there's a lot of them, and a lot of them are viable. But for right now, the important thing to look at is just the champion and what the champion can do in a 1v1 situation. So in a 1v1 situation, Aatrox versus Aatrox, I don't think you take Conqueror. You can, because Conqueror, what it does is it ramps up your damage, and after a short amount of time, you deal more and more damage until at the end of it, you gain even more damage on every one of your abilities, attacks, whatever, and Omnivamp. Basically, it just ramps up in damage until you get to maximum stacks, where it also gives you Omnivamp. Omnivamp is just their way of saying lifesteal on everything, on attacks, on attacks and abilities is what I'm trying to say. Now, Conqueror is good, but again, that requires like an extended trade. And so when I was planning on my, playing Aatrox in this thing, again, before I found out that I didn't get in it, which totally fine with that. But before I knew that, I was making my plans for Aatrox, who I was going to play, what I was going to do. My first thought was taking a different keystone entirely, and that keystone is Electrocute. Conqueror is meant for long trades, whereas Electrocute is very much meant for short, bursty trades. Electrocute says your basic attacks and ability apply stacks against champions. Hit up to 1 per attack or cast. Applying 3 stacks within 3 seconds. Like I said, 3 seconds is a really, really, really long time, right? But applying 3 stacks to that target will consume the stacks, and it'll strike them with lightning and deal extra damage. And then it has a cooldown. And that cooldown is actually really short in this game. Wow, 20 to 13. That's cool. Aatrox can proc Electrocute really, really fast. He can proc it off of all 3 Qs, I believe, but usually you want to weave in an auto too, because his passive empowers his next auto to deal extra damage and heal him. So what you're supposed to do is when you have that passive auto up, you auto, you Q again, and you've procced Electrocute, and your 2 Qs, even if they, like, didn't hit the sweet spot, they're still dealing damage. So you're pretty much always able to proc Electrocute on Aatrox on cooldown. When I say on cooldown, I mean like as soon as it comes back up, after those 20 seconds, after those 13 seconds, as soon as it comes back up, you can do it again, and you can do it again, and you can do it again. And whereas if you're doing the same thing with Conqueror, you might get max stacks by the end of your proc, which will eventually be more damage if you can continue the all-in. But if you can't, let's say that while you're doing this, you know, auto QQ combo, and the opponent just walks away from your second Q because the third one requires a bit of setup to get in. If they just walk away, you might be at full Conqueror stacks, but it just doesn't matter because, like, they walked away. And so they just let your Conqueror fizzle out. And so the extra damage that Conqueror deals after those 3 seconds, I don't feel is as important. So the upfront damage of Electrocute is really, really good. You also have upfront damage in Grasp of the Undying, where you might be playing Aatrox versus Aatrox, you're sitting there hitting minions, you're just waiting for the Grasp to stack up, and then once Grasp is there, you walk in, you hit them with your big auto, which, by the way, your big auto off of Aatrox and Grasp of the Undying can hit at the same time. So you can hit them, get a massive amount of damage and heal from your passive, and a massive, not massive, but like an increased amount of damage and heal from the Grasp of the Undying proc. You see where I'm going with this? Grasp of the Undying allows you to have Aatrox basically just walk in, do one big auto, walk out, and he's done as much damage. Not as much, but he's done a significant amount of damage without having to commit to an all-in. Now, a lot of people were committing a lot to all-ins, and that's why I say, like, if this metagame develops, if you have every Aatrox running Exhaust, Ignite, and or Flash, always Exhaust, you know, you go in and you do the Electrocute combo, you know, the auto QQ or Q auto Q, however you want to, you know, do it, and then the opponent exhausts you. You know, it's not like you want to continue that combo. It's not like you want to continue that all-in with the Conqueror. But if you have Electrocute or you have Grasp, it at least, like, sort of mitigates or like reduces the potency of that exhaust that is on you, because now you can at least get the Grasp proc, you can get the Electrocute proc, get that little bit of extra damage that Conqueror would not give you in the amount of time that exhaust allows you to have in that all-in. So that's why I think Aatrox in the 1v1 format should definitely be taking either Electrocute or Grasp. I don't say Conqueror is bad, in fact I say it's totally fine. I just say if you're going to take Conqueror as Aatrox, you need to change your game plan completely. If you're taking Electrocute or you're taking Grasp, then you do a short trade, you back out, and you just wait until the opponent is low before you all in. If you are playing Conqueror Aatrox, you need to commit to that. And if you can't tower dive them, then you probably just shouldn't try to commit, right? Or rather, if they're not by your tower or you can't tower dive them, if you're not in a safe position to just keep that trade up, to keep that power going, then Aatrox should not be, you know, continuing the all-in commitment. Yeah, sorry, I'm rambling a little bit about the runes. Essentially, Aatrox, I think it's Electrocute or Grasp. I think if you take Electrocute, then you need to do what the Ultimate Champion did in this tournament. No. Was it the champion or was it it was somebody else. I do apologize. It wasn't the champion. He might have done it too. Like I said, I didn't watch a lot of the games because I had medical leave this morning. But one of the early games, it was the first Aatrox game of the stream today. When you, by the way, you should definitely go watch that stream if you're a fan of Wild Rift or 1v1s or League of Legends in general. Go watch the Kylo Showdown Rift. It was fantastic. But in the first Aatrox game, you had both of them building different items. And I saw somebody in chat say this too, so I'm not the only one who noticed this. But the first one built Black Cleaver, whereas the one who eventually won built Duskblade. Duskblade is a lethality item. It basically is just attack damage and armor penetration. That's all the stats that are on it. It has some other effect, and that other effect isn't really relevant because he won by the time that he had completed Duskblade. He completed Duskblade, he killed the opponent in the next... he got his second kill on the opponent, and then he was just done. The match was over. But the other guy, he brought Black Cleaver, which provides attack damage and health, but Black Cleaver didn't work as well for a couple reasons. Number one, the problem that I have with Conqueror, like I said, it's the ramping damage. It's the consistent damage over time, the extended trade pattern versus the short trade pattern. And the extended trade, like I said, I just don't like it. So when you're taking Black Cleaver, what does Black Cleaver do? Basically, it adds a stack, like each time you damage an enemy, it adds a stack of armor shred up to a maximum. Which eventually goes away. You know, it like if you don't damage the enemy within, like, I think it's 3 seconds, the armor shred's gone and then they have full armor again. And since everybody has armor, even champions that haven't built a single armor item, basically what that means is that each time you attack with the Black Cleaver, you're getting more damage, again, up to like 3 seconds, and then past that it just resets. But when you're in the 1v1 situation, if the opponent, is taking damage, if they took, an auto Q auto, and then that would bring them up to 3 stacks of Black Cleaver, and then you're able to get, or the opponent is able to get out, then your Black Cleaver just resets, and you didn't get that maximum stack damage. And remember, Black Cleaver, like everything else, it's balanced around the fact that it can hit a maximum, and in the 1v1 it just doesn't hit that maximum very often. So the opponent, knowing this, the guy who eventually won that set, knowing this, he built lethality, which is not common on Aatrox in 5v5s, because in 5v5s, it builds lethality and takes, just a single bit of CC, he's gone, he's dead, Aatrox is no more. But in a 1v1 situation, lethality is significantly stronger than any fighter item you can build, save, maybe like, I don't know, Blade of the Ruined King. Because you're doing that short trade, lethality is good. You're doing the all-in trade where you're trying to kill them, lethality is good because it just is extra damage. Damage is stronger than damage tank hybrid. But then we get to the question of the people who built tank, because we saw 2 types of people win pretty much every single round. If you go back and watch, if people weren't building just the generic items that are recommended to them, they basically had 1 of 2 item types that won every single town, every single round. And it was either extra damage, like I said with the lethality Aatrox example, or tank. Tank is strong because you're allowed to back whenever you want. What backing does is, basically after a delay, so long as you don't get hit, you teleport back to the base, you heal up after a little bit, back to full health, and then you're able to do things like buy items as well, before you walk back to your lane and then just keep going. So tank is really strong because it prevents you from dying and allows you to get to the Ring of Fire situation. And if anybody has played the For Fun game mode Arena anytime recently, in either League or Wild Rift, you know how strong tanks are in the Ring of Fire situation. So, talking about the Ring of Fire, basically, after a short amount of time, I think it's like 10 minutes in total or something like that, a Ring of Fire spawns at the edge of the map, and it starts shrinking and shrinking and shrinking until it, gets to the middle of the map, and then the entire map's covered in fire. Well, while the Ring of Fire is not there and you're building tank, then what you can do is you can sit there, you can just collect minions, collect farm, get gold, and stall. Stall until the point where the Ring of Fire is close, and then you can use your increased durability to just outlast the opponent. So they're sitting there, they're trying to hit you with their damage. You can hit them back and deal damage too, especially if you build like Sunfire. But you're sitting there, you're dealing damage. Prime example was with the Blitzcrank mirror that we saw, I think, round 1. The tank Blitzcrank won because the Ring of Fire got down to where it was just them railing on each other. But the guy with damage wasn't doing a lot of damage because Tank Blitzcrank was tanky. And then when the Ring of Fire completely closed and they're both taking damage from the fire, the tank guy's fine because, again, the fire isn't dealing as much damage to him as it is dealing damage to the guy who didn't build tank. And so tank allows you to stall until the end of it, whereas damage allows you to end before the Ring of Fire closes. So what I've found, and that whole tangent, TLDR, you either want to deal as much damage as upfront as possible, or you want to stall as long as possible. Either burst or stall. Assassin or tank. You almost never want to build fighter. And we actually saw that, like I said, in the Aatrox mirror, we saw the assassin beat the fighter. And that's because like fighters are meant to beat tanks in League of Legends, but they're also meant to be strong, like in 1v1 situations where you're allowed to delay things, where you're allowed to basically just sit in the sideline alone for the entire game. You don't have that luxury when you're on a 10-minute timer until the Ring of Fire starts closing, and then once the Ring of Fire closes, if you're a fighter versus a tank, the tank just survives. And if you're a fighter versus the assassin, you don't get to the Ring of Fire because the assassin killed you twice already. So, what are the assassin builds, right? Like I said, I don't think you take Conqueror. If you're assassin on Aatrox, then you need to take Electrocute, and you need to build a lethality item. The guy built Duskblade, and I think that's totally fine, but I actually don't know what items are in this game, and I'm actually running out of time here, so I won't be able to talk about what items are exactly good. But if we were in League of Legends PC and we were doing a 1v1 in Aatrox, you'd probably want either Eclipse or Youmuu's. Again, I don't know if those items are even in Wild Rift, but you would want a lethality item first. And then your normal boots. They can even be defensive boots. It doesn't really matter. More lethality, just lethality. Any item that says lethality in the item text, that's what you would want to take. And that's it. That's how you play Aatrox. And if you do, again, take the Electrocute, take the lethality, then what you want to do, again, is just do those short bursty trades as quick as possible. Find your opponent at, half health after your first trade, and then you back off. You wait for your Electrocute to come back up. You wait for the wave state to be a little bit safer, and then you just go back in, and then you kill them on your second all-in. And then you're done. So, again, if you're doing the lethality, or the assassin Aatrox, you build Electrocute, and you build lethality, and you're done. If you're doing tank Aatrox, which, like I said, you can also do, and your playstyle doesn't change much. It's just you walk in, you auto them when your passive is up, you auto them when your grasp is up, and then you just back out, and you're gaining a lot of health and a lot of extra max health. Then you'd probably have your first item be something more akin to, like, Sunfire. I haven't actually seen too many of these, but I mean, if it was an 1v1 in PC, I'd probably say even take, like, Divine Sunder. I'd like Divine Sunder on Aatrox if you're doing Grasp, because the Sheen is another auto-attack empowerment. But again, I don't think Divine Sunder is in that game. So what would you take? You'd probably take, not Black Cleaver. Like I said, you're not really worried too much about that. You'd probably just take tank items and then, like, one AD item that gives armor, like Death Dance. Dead Man's Plate might also be good, because it gives you, again, an auto-attack empowerment. Basically, you just walk in, you get the auto from your passive, you get the auto from Grasp, you get the auto from Dead Man's Plate, and you get the auto from Sheen if you happen to have a Sheen item, and it's just, you walk in, you do one big attack, and then you can walk out and keep doing your tank stall. Whatever. Tank items, Grasp of the Undying, Electrocute, yeah. Lastly, on Aatrox, like I said, he's based around healing, so if you don't want to take Ignite, what you can do is you can have your first component item. Because items are, like, you build smaller items and then they build into the bigger item, right? You can have your first component item be either the Grievous Wounds Sword, I forget what it's called, whatever, or Bramble Vest. And again, that depends on whether you're doing Electrocute. You take the Grievous Wounds Sword. Basically, it's an attack damage component that builds into Chempunk Chainsword that also applies Grievous Wounds on all of your attacks, whereas if you're doing tank Aatrox, you would want the Bramble Vest, because that applies Grievous Wounds to anybody who hits you, and so it makes you tankier, it gives you armor, which is, again, good into Aatrox, but it also applies healing reduction, so the enemy Aatrox is just not healing as much while you're sitting there healing. So Aatrox, whether or not you're going Electrocute or Grasp, or even just Conquer, make sure that your first component item, or at least the first item you get after your first, like, mainstay item, like the Duskblade that we saw, that's when you would get the Grievous Wounds item. So Grievous Wounds items, Electrocute or Grasp. You can take Conquer again, but it changes your game style, and it's a little more clunky in a 1v1. And then build accordingly. Again, Electrocute, Lethality, Tank with Grasp. There we go. That's my TLDR for Aatrox. So now let's go to Lee Sin. Now, this guy's important. He and Aatrox are the two that I would still take... Flash with, and that's because they have really strong Flash combos. Like I said, Aatrox, if he's throwing down his sword and he flashes, then his sword hits in his new spot, the new area that he's in. So if he's standing where I am and his sword is going to hit over here, and then he flashes over here, his sword is now hitting here. Make sense? Okay. Lee Sin has the most popular Flash combo in the game. Kyle even mentioned it once or twice. It's called the Insect Kick. Basically what it is Lee Sin, he gets behind the opponent somehow, either using a flash or a ward hop. I don't know if you can even ward hop in Wild Rift. I know at some point they wanted to take it out of League and then never did. Or no, they reverted when they took it out, whatever. Whether or not you can ward hop on Lee Sin, I don't think it matters, because I don't think you can have a ward in the game, but what you can do is you can flash behind the opponent and then use your ultimate, which kicks them back. So normally, if I'm standing here and you're in front of me, and I kick you with my ultimate, you go that way. And that's usually towards your tower and you're safe. But if I'm about to kick you, and before I kick you, I flash behind you, so now I'm over here and you're here, and then I kick you, you're now going this way towards my tower. And that's basically the insect combo, right? I know in PC you can even delay start the kick and then flash, and then the kick will go off from where you're standing after the flash. It's called a buffer. I don't know if that happens in Wild Rift, but whatever the case, even if you just do a scuffed insect where you flash and then kick them, that's why Lee Sin would keep the flash, so that he can do an insect kick back into his tower, as well as the other stuff that Flash can do, getting you out of trouble. So Lee Sin, he never wants to build tank. So Lee Sin is actually very, very straightforward. He always takes Flash, and I think he always takes Exhaust, because, again, we found out in the tournament that Exhaust is just the best. So always take Flash, always take Exhaust, take Electrocute, which is normal on him. You can see that he's got a couple loadouts here. The second one is Electrocute. Take Electrocute. Oh, and I'm not talking about secondary runes, because I don't know them at all in this game, but if you want to go take a look at them, I don't even know what Mark of the Week does. It doesn't exist in PC. But if you're Lee Sin, you want to take Electrocute, because again, you want to do that quick damage and then just get out. Especially because Lee Sin can proc that really quick, like Q1, Q2, auto, walk away. That's an Electrocute. By the way, anybody who can take Electrocute, if they want to sacrifice damage for survivability, but still have the all-in potential that Electrocute has, they can also take Phase Rush. It has the same requirement of 3 damaging effects in 3 seconds, but Phase Rush, instead of dealing extra damage, it gives you a burst of movement speed. However, everything that is alongside Phase Rush, the secondary runes, they don't do as much damage, so generally Electrocute is better, but Phase Rush is really good for I don't know if Ryze is in this game, but Ryze would be a good example of what you'd bring Phase Rush in. Basically somebody who wants that positioning with Ghost, but doesn't want to use Ghost, or has Ghost on cooldown sometimes, or doesn't care about the upfront burst damage, or whatever. It's whatever. Basically, if you want to take Phase Rush instead of Electrocute, I'm not stopping you. I think Electrocute's better in the 1v1s, pretty much always. But yeah, Lee Sin, super straightforward. He's Electrocute, he's Lethality. You can build a Death Stance pretty much on any AD character in this, any AD melee character in this, because Death Stance is just really good, and it still provides attack damage, so you're not sacrificing the damage you're dealing. But after that, I mean, just build whatever you like on Lee Sin, whatever is standard. I mean, this looks fantastic. The Proto Belt enhancement, the Black Cleaver, maybe not, but and obviously not Malmortius, because that's the other thing. Everybody deals either AD, attack damage, or magic damage. And none of the champions that we had in this setup, aside from Blitzcrank, can deal both. So, if you're a Lee Sin facing a Lee Sin, you're always building armor if you're building resistances. You're never building Maw of Malmortius, because it provides magic resist, which you don't need, because Lee Sin doesn't do magic damage. Anyway, I don't think that really needs to be touched on more than that. But, yeah, back to Lee Sin. Electrocute, Lethality, you're good. Next champion was Teemo. Now, Teemo's our first magic damage champion. I think the only... Aside from... I don't know what that was. I don't care about that. Buddy, I don't care about these ads. I wish I could turn my ad blocker on, but they removed that from the game. Teemo, Kylo's favorite champion. He's the first magic damage champion we've talked about, and he, like I said, if he wants to build the magic resist, or like any sort of resistances, because I do think Tank Teemo is strong in this, then it would be magic resist. Teemo's the kind of person who would build Spirit Visage. I don't know if you guys have Force of Nature, but Force of Nature would be an option too. Yeah. So, runes for Teemo. I would pretty much always take either... Not Lethal Tempo. So Lethal Tempo is actually strong on Teemo and 1v1s in the real game, but not into the Teemo 1v1, like Teemo versus Teemo. And that's because if Teemo starts to like ramp up Lethal Tempo, what does Lethal Tempo do? Basically, the more autos you deal in a short amount of time, like each auto you deal increases your attack speed for a short amount of time, and it stacks, and then at maximum stacks you gain even more attack speed and attack range. So it's basically like you auto them and you start dealing more and faster attacks. The problem with Lethal Tempo, though, is that Teemo has access to a blind, and that blind essentially says that the opponent, like while they're blinded, they can't, like their auto attacks don't deal damage to you. So you don't actually want Lethal Tempo, and for that reason I don't think you even want Fleet Footwork into Teemo, because if you see your enemy Teemo coming up to you and he's got Fleet Footwork, he probably is trying to proc the Fleet Footwork. Basically, Fleet Footwork is another like hard-hitting auto attack type thing, like Grasp. But if your opponent is walking up to you and he's about to hit you with his, Fleet Footwork auto or even his Grasp auto, you can blind him, and that's like your counterplay in the Teemo 1v1. I still don't think that you take Fleet Footwork or Lethal, but I do think that Grasp is fine so long as you play around the blind, because Grasp has such a short cooldown, it's only 3 seconds. But I think that the best ones on Teemo are actually either Electrocute or Phase Rush, and Phase Rush is just for like a reverse of the exhaust, right? If you're on Teemo and you exhaust your opponent, or if you're on anybody and you exhaust your opponent, you can stick to them because they're slower than you. Well, if you get Phase Rush and you're faster than them, then you can also stick to them, in the same sort of way where it doesn't matter if they're going slow and you're going normal speed, or if they're going normal speed and you're going fast, you're still sticking to them. And so that's why I say Phase Rush is good, because Teemo is really good at extended trades. Basically, every one of his auto attacks does poison, and that poison just keeps dealing damage to them. And so if you can just keep damaging them, then that poison keeps refreshing and keeps damaging. Electrocute also works because he attacks a lot, just naturally, and then like an auto Q auto, or even just 3 autos, or an auto, and I think even the poison can proc Electrocute. Also really good. He'd also be the kind of person to take First Strike, but I don't like First Strike in this because you're not really ramping up to get items faster than the opponent because you're ending at 10 minutes anyway, so don't worry about First Strike. I think that in the 1v1 situation, you take either Electrocute or Phase Rush, and you go for like full magic damage items. What those damage items might be, I, again, don't really know. I just know that you don't take Nashor's because, again, his auto attacks. Nashor's gives attack speed and AP and ability power, like magic damage. You don't care about the Nashor's attack speed as much in the Teemo 1v1 because the Teemo is just going to blind you. So instead you'd go for things like Leandri's, you'd go for Void Staff. You just want to get as much damage as possible, as early as possible, without relying too much on auto attacks. You can get an auto in even if you're blinded, and then you can blind them, and then your poison is dealing damage. And really, the way that you win the 1v1 with Teemo versus Teemo is poison. So he's straightforward. I think his standard build is even Electrocute, but if it is Fleet Footwork and you take Fleet Footwork, it's not bad. It's just a smart opponent with better reaction time than the 250 ping that I would be having playing can just Q you and blind you and make it so that your Fleet Footwork auto or your Grasp auto doesn't do anything. Teemo can also build tank, like I said. I just don't recommend it in this game mode as much because you don't have access to Divine Sunderer, I don't think. Let's actually look. Let's just find out if Divine Sunderer is in Wild Rift. I don't think it is. I don't think I'm seeing it. Oh, no, it is. Oh, okay. Jarium's Fist. Does it still provide... Okay. The reason you take Divine Sunder in base league is because it provides magic pen, even though it's an AD item. It also provides magic pen. Because you don't have access to that in Wild Rift, like you'd be playing AD Teemo, which is just worse unless you get more items than your opponent, which again doesn't matter, you're only playing for 10 minutes anyway. So don't do Divine Sunder on Teemo. I would say, I've convinced myself, don't even play tank Teemo, but if you want to, I mean, you need a Sheen item, maybe like Lich Bane, and then just go into full tank items. Yeah, that's probably it. Okay, after Teemo we have Blitzcrank. Blitzcrank is unique because he can build literally anything. Any type of item except for Enchanter. So he can build AD, he can build AP, or he can build tank. Now his AD build is not going to be as good in this game mode, so just ignore that for now, but in the main game, even the main Wild Rift game, he can build it, so nice. Blitzcrank, jeez, why, like, these pages are inconsistent. I just wanted to look at what the base game recommends. I do know that the base game, at least one of their recommendations for Blitzcrank, because I played one game of Blitzcrank, recommended Aftershock, and like I said earlier, don't bring Aftershock into a 1v1. Aftershock is balanced around the fact that it's granting you extra armor and magic resist, assuming that you're going to be attacked by multiple people, and it's dealing damage in a circle around you, again, assuming you're going to be attacked by multiple people. I wouldn't take Aftershock. You can. It's not going to be bad. You know, there's nothing bad about it. But it is, again, balanced around the fact that your opponent is going to be dealing... Or, like, multiple opponents are going to be attacking you, and, like, you're not getting that in the 1v1. By the way, that's also the reason you don't take Glacial, because even though it provides a slow, I mean, that's good, but Exhaust is just a better slow anyway, so I don't know. I don't like Glacial. Anyway, Blitzcrank. We saw Grasp versus, I think, Aftershock in the very first round of the stream today, and Grasp of the Undying won, and that's because the guy built tank. He built Sunfire, which I think is fantastic, especially since it still deals the like AoE on each of your autos, so I'd say that Sunfire is probably the best tank item to get first on pretty much anybody that you're building tank, and that includes Aatrox and Teemo, if you're going to do tank Teemo, which again I don't think you should. But I think the best Blitzcrank runes are, again, once again, as always, going to be Grasp, Electrocute, and Fleet Footwork. Fleet Footwork gives you access to the Precision tree, which is generally more like sustain-y stuff, which I don't, again, like very much in a 1v1, because you want short, bursty trades, or you want long to stall, is what I'm saying. But Fleet Footwork at least gives you extra damage, and it heals you, and it allows you to run away faster. But extra damage and healing also comes from Grasp, and Grasp we found was really strong. And then Electrocute allows you to build damage. If you do Electrocute, that's when you build things like Leandry's and Nashor's Tooth. Blitzcrank in the base game... Let me find out if he has this here. I just don't know. Like, this thing is not helping me out very much. Maybe if I click on Wild Rift, that will help. Okay. Passive on his ultimate, right? So as soon as he hits level 5 in this game, when Static Field, his ultimate is not on cooldown, his basic attacks apply a mark that detonates after a second that deals magic damage, and that magic damage scales. So what you do on Blitzcrank, if you're building APs, you build Nashor's Tooth into Leandry's or something like that, and each of your auto attacks after a second deals extra magic damage. So basically it's like on hit, but delayed on hit. So Blitzcrank with Electrocute, Nashor's Tooth, Punch, Punch, Punch. Your E counts as a punch as well. Each of those attacks deals extra damage. And then you have your ultimate, your actual cast of the ultimate, excuse me, as a finisher. Pretty strong one too, because it's like 200 base damage plus 80% AP. Pretty good. Especially because Nashor's Tooth is an AP item. It's AP and attack speed, which is really good with the passive, and it's really good with the active. So, yeah. If you're building... on-hit Blitzcrank, again, Electrocute, Fleet Footwork is fine too. You're punching them until they get low, and then once they're at like 25% health or so, you'll ultimate, and then that'll silence them, that'll potentially kill them, and then all of your delayed like magic damage shocks are still happening from the passive here too, so it's not bad. However, I think that Blitzcrank almost always is going to want to be tank anyway. We saw that in the tournament. It was really good. It stalled forever. You take Grasp, and you go... Yep. It is actually the same in the PC. I don't know if Ludens is in this game, but, if you do, that's fine too. But whatever the case, it's Nashor's Tooth, and then whatever. You'd go Electrocute, again, or Fleet Footwork in the 1v1. Even Lethal Tempo I don't dislike, but, again, I don't like the extended trade game plan in the 1v1 because, again, you can just walk away from it, and, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, Electrocute I think is going to be the best one if you're doing the Nashor's Tooth AP, but again, in the 1v1 situation, Blitzcrank versus Blitzcrank, I think you take Grasp, I think you take Sunfire, I think you build full tank, and you wait until the 10-minute mark, and then you just sit there Sunfiring them to death while the Ring of Fire is also burning them. Double burn. As for, like, summoner spells, I don't know. Same as always, Exhaust and, like, Ignite. Ignite if you're... dealing damage is good, and then Ignite if your tank is good because it allows you to get even more burn. The Ring of Fire burn, your Sunfire burn, and the Ignite burn. That damage ramps up. Who else do we have? We have Yasuo and Ezreal to look at. So Yasuo is the easiest one in the entire game to talk about because he's the only one who has basically only one build in Wild Rift. The only thing I would say is that if you see your opponent has Ignite in the loading screen going into it, you just don't build Bloodthirster, and you don't build Shield Bow, and you don't build Blade of the Rune King, unless you want to, I guess. I mean, they're not bad items either. You would just do his normal build, his normal attack speed on hit, and then you would, just outplay the opponent before you become the 0-2 Yasuo and lose. Yasuo is straightforward. He only ever has one build, and that's just either on-hit attack speed or crit, which are basically overlapping. So, again, Lethal Tempo, Conqueror is fine too, Kraken Slayer, which is, again, for some reason, a passive, or a rune in this game. Weird. I even like Fleet, if you want to do, like I said, short trades are better, so if you want to do Fleet, what you can do is you can go in on Yasuo, Q, auto Q, go out, and your Fleet Footwork proc is really strong. Lethal Tempo and Conqueror in that situation where you're doing that short trade doesn't matter nearly as much. I can also definitely see Grasp on Yasuo because at least in the base game his Q counts as an auto attack. I don't know if it does in this. Yeah, okay, it applies on hit. So you can also do Grasp if you want to, because like I said, you're always in this 1v1 versus yourself, either trying to build more damage or more tank, but never a hybrid. So I could see you doing Grasp into, like, Divine Sunderer or Sunfire, but I don't think we saw that in the tournament. If we did, again, sorry, I wasn't there for the whole thing. But I don't see it being bad. I just, naturally speaking, ADC-type champions are strong into tanks anyway, because they can build the on-hit shred items, like, imagine, like, you start building tank and then your opponent builds Blade of the Ruin King, they're doing % health damage, and then they build Black Cleaver, and they're also, like, shredding your armor. But is Blade of the Ruin King Black Cleaver... Now I'm thinking, is Blade of the Ruin King Black Cleaver the only two items you're going to get in that 10 minutes? Maybe Grasp is good on Yasuo in the 1v1. I just don't know, especially, again, you only have 10 minutes to play, so you only get, like, 2 items maximum. I don't see Grasp being bad. So Grasp or Fleet would be what I would pick, but Conqueror and Lethal Tempo, they're not bad either. Kraken Slayer, either, also not bad. Lastly, we have Ezreal. Ezreal is... We had somebody who was famously, like, brought up on stream before the streams, like the tournament stream. Ezreal was brought up as a potential for tank Ezreal, and that's because Ezreal in every build of the game can build Iceborne Gauntlet, which is a tank item that has Sheen on it. Sheen is, again, an empowered auto attack after you cast a spell, or an ability, I should say. So Iceborne Gauntlet Ezreal isn't bad, but then when we saw somebody build Iceborne Gauntlet Ezreal in the tournament stream today, they lost. It was the finals, in fact. It was, I guess, spoiler, the very last game, the person building tank Ezreal actually lost. And that's, once again, because if you have the ability to build, like, Blade of the Ruin King into a tank, then you're just winning. If you have the ability to build even Divine Sunderer, I've seen on Ezreal, in Wild Rift, like one of the 2 games that I saw on Ezreal, he built Divine Sunderer into Blade of the Ruin King, and he won. He won lane. He was really strong. and then also able to take out the tank Nasus, however you pronounce it, really quickly with that setup as well. So that setup does exist in Wild Rift 2 as well. But Ezreal just is basically, like, if you're doing the damage, you need to build ADC. But if you're doing damage into a tank, you need to, at some point, slot in the Blade of the Ruined King or the Black Cleaver. But he's always taking a Sheen item as well, and there's Sheen items for all of those. So it's like, Ezreal is just the most complicated and itemization, in my opinion, because everything he can do, everything we've seen him do has been good. We saw tank Ezreal get up to the top 16. We saw, normal Ezreal beat the tank Ezreal in the winners bracket. We saw, excuse me, we saw every kind of Ezreal that you can be in this game, except for AP Ezreal. I don't think you build AP Ezreal in this game. The reason that AP Ezreal doesn't work even in PC League is because all of his abilities, even though they have AP scaling, they scale with increased magic damage items, they don't often do extra magic damage. This one does and this one does, but you max out Q first pretty much always. I guess your ultimate does too. Is this different in PC? Because this is why you don't do it in PC, is because, right, his passive physical damage. So physical damage on his passive, physical damage on his Q, they don't scale with magic pen, but you also don't want armor pen because this thing and this thing don't do physical damage. So when you take Black Cleaver on Ezreal, the only reason it works is because you're getting that passive autos, and those are usually most of his damage anyway on a good Ezreal, are his passives, and his Q, applying the on hits, right? Sorry, I'm rambling because I'm figuring things out like as I go along for Ezreal, because I think he's slightly different, and if he isn't, then I just am not up to date on current Ezreal and PC either. I just don't think you build magic because, what I always feel about, like, super AP burst is that it either works or it doesn't, and if it doesn't, you lose. Like, it either works or you lose. For other champions, if you're building, like, one-shot assassin on a champion, like, let's say Aatrox, it either works and you kill them in one hit, not really one hit, but you kill them in one all-in, or you can still be useful, usually. You can still get the slowing item in a 5v5 situation or in a 1v1 situation. You could still get, like, Blade of the Ruined King is built on Aatrox for some reason. You could still get those things and sort of sit there sustaining up and be useful to yourself or to your team or whatever if you don't finish the all-in. But on a mage, it's like, aside from the slow item, which I don't even think exists in Wild Rift, it might, I don't know, Rylai's. But, like, ability power items are have more ability. What am I trying to say? Ability power items have more magic resist penetration than attack damage items have armor penetration. So the attack damage items balance you around the fact that you can be useful without having extra armor pen, again, unless you're full lethality. Yeah, it's not terrible, but I don't think AP Ezreal is, like, the way to go in the 1v1. And when I say 1v1 again, it's Ezreal versus Ezreal. And you can also see the ratios are, like, way off. Like, okay, look at this. 130% of your attack damage gets converted into extra damage on your Q. That's a lot of damage. 15% of your AP. Whatever. The maximum AP ratio that you have on anything on Ezreal's kit is his ultimate, and it's 90%. 90% of your ability power at maximum gets applied to your abilities, whereas 130% plus 100% on each one of your autos gets applied to every one of your to this ability from the physical damage side of things. Yeah. So as for build, as for runes, again, we saw Grasp of the Undying tank Ezreal, and it worked up until the finals. You can also take Fleet Footwork or Electrocute. As always, like, Electrocute, Fleet Footwork, Kraken Slayer I can see on Ezreal, because he gets those really fast auto attacks from his passive, even at level, I guess you start at 3, even at level 3, so. Yeah. Alright, I've talked about every champion. I also rambled a lot, so I'm just going to say very quickly what I think is like the overall takeaway from each section, right? When you're considering your runes and you're considering your items in a 1v1 situation with a ring of fire like an arena, you have two options, and neither of those options, in my opinion, should be fighter items. Your 1v1 options should be dealing a lot of damage really quickly, which is why I say electrocute and even grasp, or stalling the game out as long as possible, collecting that farm, getting those tank items, and then waiting for the ring of fire to close so that you just are unkillable while they sit there and burn. And so for that reason, for pretty much every champion, you need to look at them and you need to say, how can I deal the most amount of damage or reduce the most amount of damage? Again, for Aatrox, you want to get that healing cut as soon as possible. Even after your first item is fine, but that's about as late as you can go. And I don't see tank Aatrox being bad, again, because Sunfire is just really good in this 1v1 format. Lee Sin, just always go electrocute, always go lethality, just try to outplay your opponent. Lee Sin's the outplay champion anyway. Teemo, build that AP, don't worry about the tank stuff. Don't try tank Teemo, because the strongest tank item in this 1v1 is based around being in melee range, and Teemo's a ranged champion, so I wouldn't say grasp Teemo. I mean, you could still do grasp on Teemo and just have it be, an extra damage on an auto attack every once in a while. But if you're going to do Teemo in this game mode, I say just do electrocute like normal or fleet footwork. But if you're fleet footwork, be wary of the opponent blind. Blitzcrank, I say always go tank on Blitzcrank, but the on-hit Nashor's electrocute, also really good on Blitzcrank. Very good too. Ezreal, I mean, we saw everything work on Ezreal. Basically just build whatever the heck you want. If you do AP and succeed, then like heck yeah, because AP can do a lot of damage. As you can probably see in chat there, it does a ton if you do it right, but it's usually item dependent and you don't have a lot of items in this game mode, so toss up on how you do it. But I personally say if you're going to do Ezreal, I didn't actually say this, I would say electrocute and or Kraken Slayer, and then just build your normal items like Trinity Force, whatever. Just whatever you do on Ezreal, always build a Sheen item. Always get a Sheen into something else, so that Sheen can build into Divine Sunder if you're tank. It can build into Triforce if you're attack speed, and it can build into Frozen or Iceborne Gauntlet as well if you're tank. And lastly, Yasuo, just basic Yasuo stuff. Basic Yasuo builds and runes. If you see your opponent with Ignite, maybe don't prioritize getting the shield bow. And that's going to do it. So that's my League of Legends Wild Rift 1v1 breakdown. I'm going to pull this back up. And we can get into the very final thing where I can talk about next semester. I had a lot of fun doing this metagame analysis type thing, and I said I would do it no matter what, and I did. So, hey, here we are. I'm a little embarrassed to talk about it, because obviously I'm not the most knowledgeable guy in the world. If somebody is watching this as a VOD or something and says, this is just wrong, please tell me. I don't want to ever say that I'm, smarter than anybody else about anything. I wanted to do this metagame guide first because I did a lot of research. I looked at every single, champion and what they normally build, and then I said, I don't feel like this is good in the 1v1 situation. So then I looked at PC and what I would do if I was an Aatrox versus an Aatrox, which doesn't exist in PC or in Wild Rift, but whatever. The takeaway is I was thinking about this a lot, and I was doing some research as much as I could with my dyslexia, right? I have a really hard time reading wikis, but I was sitting there, one of my days driving DoorDash here just a block away, I was sitting, waiting for an order for an hour, and the entire time I was getting a headache because I was reading the Wild Rift wiki on all the items, and I still don't remember them because, again, horrible memory, horrible dyslexia. Not horrible dyslexia, just dyslexia is horrible. But my dyslexia isn't bad. The takeaway is this. I wanted to help people with the Wild Rift tournament, but I didn't want to post this before it because I wanted people to figure it out themselves. And I wanted to post it after because I also didn't want to cut into anybody who was looking at the Twitter or YouTube hashtags for the Kylo Showdown Rift and see me instead of her. So, first of all, if you're a fan of Wild Rift, go watch her VOD. Go watch the Kyla Kowalski VOD. Go watch the tournament. Watch people play through it. It was a fantastic watch. The guy who won was incredible. Just an incredible player. Everybody thought that he was on T1. I mean, not really, but you know, like, it was a treat to watch. It was a lot of hard work was put into it by some very talented and very dedicated people, including, of course, Kyla. Primarily, of course, Kyla. So please, if you're a fan of Wild Rift, go rewatch the VOD. Go, in fact, I'll even put it in the description. Why not? Go rewatch the VOD. Go participate in the Wild Rift community. I'm sure this is what she would want to. And if you're not a Wild Rift fan, I would still go watch her anyway, because she watches or plays pretty much every game ever. Anyway, I'm done shilling for her. Shilling isn't the right word. I'm done doing that. As for me, I'm going to be doing more League content this semester. I have this channel primarily because my coach asked me to have a channel in the first place. So I'm going to be streaming Hearthstone and League, my two competitive games, and I think most of it is going to be League because it's the game I prefer. Even though I'm a Hearthstone national champion, I think I would rather try to become a League of Legends national champion as well. So thank you to everybody who came. I got 12 total people here, which is like 10 times more than I thought I would get, to be honest. So I'm happy. I'm excited. And I hope nobody found me pretentious or annoying or anything like that, because that is my #1 anxiety in life. So thank you all for coming. Have a good rest of your day and night and whatever time zone you're in. And yeah, let me find the OBS so I can end this stream and go finish cooking my pozole. Thank you seriously so much for participating, and